The village lay still under the weight of dusk, its paths lined with the faint flicker of lanterns. The Baobab, ancient and towering, stood at its center, casting long, twisted shadows. As Amina approached, she could feel its weight pressing, down on her chest, a strange mix of excitement and dread. Something stirred in the air, something old. She could sense the villagers' nervous glances as they passed, their eyes shifting toward the massive tree. Whispers followed her every step, the village full of secrets. Amina and Bashir worked side by side, the shovel striking the earth with a deep thud. The air buzzed with tension, the wind carrying soft whispers that curled around them, like voices just beyond reach. "It's just the wind," Amina muttered, wiping sweat from her brow. But Bashir, his eyes darting nervously at the tree, wasn't so sure. The whispers grew louder, almost as if the Baobab itself was alive, trying to warn them of something terrible. Amina didn't hear it, her focus fixed on the hole they were digging. Mama Kwame, the village elder, appeared from the shadows, her ancient form bent under the weight of wisdom and fear. Her voice trembled as she spoke, each word heavier than the last. "No one who disturbs the Baobab has ever walked away whole." She paused, eyes narrowing. "It holds more than memories. It holds the curse of the dead. Beware, children. Beware of what lies beneath." The wind howled in agreement, the very leaves trembling as though responding to her words. But Amina, filled with determination, waved her off. "It's just superstition," she snapped. "I've come too far to stop now. The air thickened as Amina's eyes burned with defiance. She stood tall, undeterred by Mama Kwame's warning. "This is my chance," Amina said firmly, "to change everything. This treasure is mine." Bashir shook his head, the fear in his eyes deepening. "Amina, you don't understand. There's power in the ground we stand on, and it's not meant for us." He reached out, trying to grasp her arm, but she jerked away. "I'll find the treasure, and then no one will ever look down on us again. Not the village, not anyone." Her words echoed in the silence, the storm beginning to stir in the distance. The wind grew violent, crashing against their backs as the first raindrops fell. The clouds above churned in ominous patterns, as if summoned by Amina's defiance. Thunder rumbled in the distance, deep and foreboding. Bashir's heart hammered in his chest. "Amina, please, let's go. The curse is real." But Amina, eyes alight with the fire of determination, ignored him, her hands gripping the shovel even tighter. The storm's fury echoed her resolve as if the very earth was stirring beneath them, angry, restless. Suddenly, with a deafening crack, the ground beneath their feet shook. Amina stumbled, but before she could regain her balance, the earth split open with a rumble so deep it felt as though the land itself was roaring. A hidden chamber yawned wide, ancient stone walls glinting in the dim light. And there, buried deep within the soil, lay the skeletal remains of King Okoro, his skull crowned with a golden mask that gleamed with an eerie glow. Amina's breath caught in her throat. She stepped forward, mesmerized. But Bashir recoiled, terror flooding his face. "It's too much," he whispered. "This is not for us." Ignoring Bashir's voice, Amina knelt before the mask, her fingers trembling as they hovered over the gold. "This is it," she whispered. "This is what I've been searching for." Her eyes, wide with belief, sparkled. All her dreams, all her sacrifices were just within reach. Bashir, his hands clenched, backed away. "You can't control this, Amina. It's not yours to take." His voice cracked, but Amina didn't hear him. Her obsession, stronger than any warning, consumed her. The storm raged louder, as though it too was warning her. As Amina continued her search, uncovering more bones and relics, The air grew thicker, with an unsettling presence. Bashir could feel the spirit stirring beneath them, ancient and angry. His voice shook as he pleaded again. "Amina, please! We need to stop. They're waking up." But Amina didn't pause. She was lost in the discovery, ignoring the storm and the deepening dread in the air. "It's all real," she whispered, almost to herself. "I was right all along." The earth groaned beneath her, and the whispering voices grew louder, closing in around them like a tightening noose. As the last of the relics were uncovered, a low, guttural moan rose from the ground. The baobab tree swayed, its massive branches creaking as if it were alive. The ground beneath them trembled with the energy of something ancient awakening. Amina froze, her hand still on the mask, her heart racing. The whispers turned to screams, voices of the long-dead villagers, now stirred from their slumber. Bashir, eyes wide with terror, grabbed Amina's arm. "We have to go now." But Amina, consumed by the power of her discovery, didn't move. The earth roared in fury as the first spirit rose from the soil, its eyes glowing with the rage of centuries. Amina stood at the edge of the village, her eyes fixed on the horizon. Beyond the familiar dust and clay walls, beyond the narrow roads where the same faces walked each day, there was a world she could not yet reach. Her heart burned with the desire to escape. This village, with its faded traditions and quiet routines, was a cage. But there was a way out. The treasure buried beneath the baobab could buy her freedom, her future, her destiny. She had no time for the whispers of danger. Her mind was made up. The baobab would give her the life she dreamed of, no matter the cost. Bashir watched his sister's every move, his heart growing heavier with each step she took toward the baobab. "Amina, you must stop," he urged, his voice strained with the weight of his fear. "You don't know what you're playing with. The baobab, it's cursed. It holds the spirit of King Okoro, a spirit that punishes those who disturb its rest." Amina turned to him with a sharp laugh. "A spirit?" She shook her head, her eyes glittering with ambition. "We need the gold, Bashir. Spirits don't pay the bills. I'm going to change our lives, and nothing, not even curses, will stand in my way." Mama Kwame sat in the shadows, her aged eyes tracking the siblings as they moved closer to the baobab. The weight of the village's history pressed upon her like a storm cloud. She had seen this before. The reckless pursuit of treasure, the defiance of ancient warnings. Her bones ached with the knowledge of what was to come. Yet, she knew she couldn't stop them. "They will not listen," she murmured to herself, her heart heavy with the burden of wisdom. All she could do was watch and wait for the inevitable. The village grew tense as the siblings passed through. Whispers followed them like a shadow. Some villagers watched with concern, muttering about the baobab's curse, while others scoffed, mocking the old beliefs. "Foolishness," one man chuckled, his voice carrying the weight of modern progress. "There is no curse, only superstition." But a woman nearby, her face marked by the lines of many years, crossed her arms. "Those who mock, the spirits will pay the price," she warned, her gaze turning to the tree, where the wind seemed to whisper in reply. Bashir flinched at the sound, his unease growing, but Amina's eyes burned with impatience. The day dragged on, and Amina's patience wore thin. She walked with purpose, but the slow rhythm of village life grated against her. The harvest festival, preparations, the women gathering herbs, the elders sitting in their circles. All of it felt like chains, holding her back from the future she wanted. "This is a waste of time," she muttered under her breath, as she passed a group of women chanting softly to the ancestors. "I don't need rituals. I need gold." She barely looked at them, her mind consumed with the treasure that lay buried beneath the Baobab. Bashir, however, paused to offer a quiet prayer as he passed. Amina's gaze lingered for a moment before she shook her head. "The old ways won't save us," she muttered, turning away. As evening fell, the villagers gathered for the harvest festival. The drums echoed through the air, deep and steady. The women swayed in rhythm, their bodies moving with grace, honoring the spirits of the land. Amina stood to the side, her arms crossed, her eyes fixed on the dance. She could see the joy in the movement, the connection to something greater. But all she could think about was the treasure, how she could never truly escape this life without it. Bashir joined the dancers reluctantly, but his spirit seemed to draw strength from the ritual. His hands lifted in prayer, his face softening as the drums seemed to speak to his soul. Amina watched him for a moment, feeling a pang of something she couldn't name. But then she turned away, her resolve hardening. As the night deepened, Mama Kwame approached Amina. Her eyes, shadowed by the weight of age, bore into the young woman's soul. "You do not understand the Baobab," Mama Kwame said quietly, her voice laced with sorrow. "It is not just a tree. It is a living being, older than this village, older than time itself. It holds the spirit of King Okoro, who once ruled this land. He watches over us, and he does not take kindly to those who disturb his rest." Amina shrugged, dismissing her words. "I don't believe in spirits, Mama Kwame. I believe in treasure, and that's all I need." Mama Kwame's lips tightened, but she said nothing more, knowing the truth could not reach Amina's heart. Later, as the village celebrated, Amina's impatience flared again. The drums grew louder, but they seemed like noise to her now. "Why waste time with all this?" she muttered to herself, stepping away from the circle. She could hear Mama Kwame's voice echoing in the back of her mind, but it faded quickly. "The Baobab is not sacred. It's just a tree," Amina said aloud, her voice defiant. Her brother's concerned expression only fueled her resolve. "You can believe in your old superstitions, Bashir, but I'm going after what's mine." With that, she stormed off, leaving her brother standing alone, his heart heavy with dread. The atmosphere in the village grew more charged as the days passed. Some villagers sided with Amina, scoffing at the old ways, eager to see the treasure unearthed and the wealth it would bring. "The world is changing," they said. "We must move with it." But others, their eyes filled with worry, stayed loyal to the traditions. "You cannot challenge the spirits," they warned. "The Baobab will not let you take what it guards." Tensions bubbled beneath the surface as the gap between ambition and superstition widened. Amina could feel the division, but it only made her more determined. The treasure was within reach, and nothing, no curse, no spirit, would stop her. The air grew thick with the tension between Amina's ambition and Bashir's reverence for the past. As Amina pressed forward, ignoring the warnings, Bashir's fear only deepened. He spoke to her again, his voice barely above a whisper, but the weight of his words was clear. "Amina, don't you see? The world doesn't belong to us alone. We are part of something bigger, something that has been here long before us and will remain long after we are gone." Amina didn't respond. She had her eyes fixed firmly on the future, the wealth, the power, the freedom. The old ways, she decided, were simply holding her back. The Baobab would not stand in her way. The whispers started faint, but grew into loud, jagged sounds, cutting through the silence of the night. It was like a voice coming from the very earth, a low growl that made the hairs on the back of their necks stand. Amina hardly noticed. Her mind was too focused on the treasure buried deep beneath the Baobab tree. She would be the one to unearth it, no matter the warnings. Bashir, however, couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. The dreams came next. In the dead of night, he would wake drenched in sweat, his breath short as he saw spirits. Shadowy figures drifting through his sleep, their eyes empty, their mouths wide open, in silent screams. Each night the dreams grew darker. He would wake, heart racing, ears ringing with the unsettling whispers. Yet, Amina remained undeterred, resolute in her obsession. "The land is calling, Bashir," she would say. "We're almost there." But Bashir couldn't stop his growing dread. The voice, the shadows. Something was wrong. The land was stirring, and it wasn't for the good. The Baobab was angry. One morning, as they dug deeper, the earth gave way to a hidden layer of bones and relics, fragments of lives lost. The bones seemed to have been forgotten. Their owners never returned to be laid to rest. It was more than just an ancient burial. It felt like the land itself was shaking in its slumber. "Do you see this?" Bashir's voice trembled. He ran a hand over an old shard of pottery, its smooth surface now cracked. "These bones. They're not meant to be disturbed." Amina, however, only brushed the warning away. She knelt, unearthing more shards and a broken amulet, smiling to herself. "This is it. We're on the right path, Bashir." But with every relic they uncovered, the whispers grew louder. Something was watching them, something ancient, and the ground, once quiet and welcoming, seemed to hum with a growing tension. Then, as if summoned by the very earth itself, Ikon appeared. His face was stern, his eyes sharp, but there was an edge of knowing in them, a quiet confidence that unsettled Bashir even more. "I've been sent by the descendants of King Okoro," Ikon declared. "The treasure beneath this tree must be retrieved. It was meant for the chosen ones." Amina's eyes lit up. She saw a way forward, a partner who could help her gain what she desired. "What's the deal?" she asked quickly. Ikon smiled, a glint in his eyes. "I'll help you find it, but you must promise to share it with me. Gold, power, even more than that. The artifact hidden there has the potential to change everything." Bashir, already on edge, could not ignore the unease that grew within him. "Amina, please, listen to me. Ikon isn't who he says he is. This is not a simple treasure hunt. This is a curse." The villagers were beginning to feel the effects of their digging. Livestock were found dead, their bodies twisted and frozen in unnatural ways. People fell ill, feverish and weak. Fear began to rise in the village, and even those who had once mocked the old superstitions now looked at the Baobab with dread. Olamide, the village healer, was the first to speak out, her voice trembling with urgency as she caught Bashir in the market. "The Baobab is cursed, Bashir. It's a spirit's prison, a place of power far beyond our understanding. Whatever is buried there has a price. I have seen it. I have felt it," she warned. But Bashir's pleas fell on deaf ears. Amina's mind was consumed. The thought of riches, of changing her life, blinded her to the danger, and she brushed aside Olamide's warning. "You don't understand, Olamide," Amina scoffed. "This is our chance to break free. The treasure will change everything. What's a curse compared to a life of freedom?" As the days went on, the village grew sicker. The whispers echoed in every corner, carried by the wind. The trees seemed to moan with grief. Yet, Amina's determination only grew. Each morning she would wake with a new plan, pushing Bashir and Ikon further into the heart of the Baobab. "Stop, Amina. Please stop," Bashir cried out one night, his voice rising in panic. "This is no longer about treasure. It's about survival. The spirits are angry." But Amina's mind was set. She refused to turn back, unwilling to abandon her dream. "I can't, Bashir. I won't. This is our future." As they dug deeper into the roots of the baobab, something shifted in the air. The ground seemed to pulse, guiding them toward the heart of the tree. They uncovered more: bones, artifacts, ancient symbols. But the true secret of the baobab was just out of reach. Ikon, sensing the pull of the power, leaned closer to Amina. "You can feel it, can't you? The power waiting to be unleashed. This is bigger than gold. This is a legacy." His words were intoxicating, and Amina found herself drawn to the promise of what lay hidden. Her hunger for the treasure began to consume her, drowning out all doubts. Bashir stepped back, his fear now evident. "Amina, this isn't just treasure. It's power, yes, but it's cursed. If we take it, we will bring ruin upon ourselves." But Amina barely heard him. Her gaze locked on Ikon's. Ikon pushed closer, his voice now low and persuasive. "Think of what you could do with this power. You could change everything. Forget the village. Forget the curse. This is bigger than anything they've told you. This is your destiny." In that moment, the tension in the air thickened, and Amina's mind wavered. The whispers seemed to crescendo, as though urging her forward, toward the heart of the baobab. Her hand trembled as she reached for the artifact. But what would she risk to claim it? What would the land demand in return? The ground trembled beneath their feet as Amina dug deeper. Each shovel of earth felt heavier, as if the land itself was resisting. But Amina would not stop. She could almost taste the treasure, the power it promised, and she was determined to claim it. Her hands worked quickly, desperate to uncover what lay hidden beneath the baobab's roots. Then, a crack. The earth groaned as a small fissure appeared. Amina's heart raced. She pushed harder, scraping away the soil with frantic energy. A soft rumble echoed from deep within the earth as the crack widened. Suddenly the ground gave way completely, and a hidden chamber emerged from the dark soil. The walls, etched with ancient symbols, seemed to pulse with energy. "This is it," she whispered, her voice breathless with excitement. She reached forward, her fingers brushing the surface of the chamber's entrance, as the air around them grew thick with tension. But just as her hand made contact, a flash of light erupted from below. The earth cracked open further, and from the depths, the spirits of long-dead villagers rose, their forms twisted and angry. They screeched, their voices a chorus of fury and despair. Amina froze. The mask she had found, glowing with a sickly light, sat in her hand, radiating power, but also a terrible, deep darkness. The spirits swarmed around them, their faces twisted with sorrow and rage. Amina's breath caught in her throat as she realized the truth. The mask was no mere treasure. It was a key to something far older, something far more dangerous. But she had already gone too far. She could not turn back. Akon stepped forward, his calm demeanor now slipping as he observed the chaos unfolding. "You don't understand, Amina. This was never meant for you," he said, his voice low, almost amused. Amina turned to him, the mask still clutched tightly in her hands. "What do you mean?" Ikon's eyes gleamed with the knowledge of his long-hidden truth. "I am a descendant of King Okoro. This artifact, this mask, was never meant for someone like you. It was meant for me to restore my bloodline's power. You, Amina, were nothing but a tool, a pawn in a game that you couldn't possibly understand." Amina's stomach twisted. She had been used. All of her efforts, all her sacrifices, had been for nothing. She felt her world collapse, the weight of betrayal crashing down on her like the spirits rising from the earth. The ground beneath them shook again, harder this time, and the spirits screamed louder. The Baobab was angry, furious, at their trespass. The earth cracked again, as if it were about to swallow them whole. "We need to leave," Bashir shouted, his voice barely audible over the wailing spirits. But Amina stood frozen, torn between the mask's allure and the violent storm of vengeful souls around her. The voices of the dead filled her ears, demanding justice for the wrongs committed against them. Ekon's smirk deepened. "You can't leave. Not now. The mask is mine. I will have it, and I will bring my bloodline back to power." As he reached for the mask, the spirits turned on him, their fury now focused entirely on Ekon. Their hands, long, skeletal, and cold, gripped at his arms and legs, pulling him toward the earth. Amina watched in shock as Ekon struggled, his cries echoing through the chaos. But the spirits were merciless. They tore at his body, dragging him toward the ground as he screamed in agony. The mask slipped from his grasp, falling into Amina's hands once again. But the sight of Ekon's fate did not bring her peace. It only made her more aware of the price of their greed. The ground continued to shake violently, the Baobab's curse reaching its breaking point. The spirits were not done. They were not finished. Amina's mind raced. She held the mask, the object of her obsession, but now it felt heavy, cursed. She could feel its power, its hunger. But she also felt the weight of the spirits' wrath, their anger for disturbing the sacred earth. There was no escape from what had been unleashed. "Fight or flee?" A voice inside her whispered. But could she even escape now? Ekon's cries were growing faint, his body being pulled deeper into the earth. His bloodline's quest for power had led to his downfall, and now Amina was left holding the mask. The Baobab's curse was unfolding in full force now, the earth shaking with fury. The spirits, once dormant, were fully awake, and they were no longer willing to tolerate the trespassers. The land itself was alive with rage, and no one would leave unscathed. Amina could feel it. The spirits wanted justice. The Baobab was demanding payment. The earth groaned beneath her feet, and as the air thickened with the weight of the curse, Amina knew one thing for certain. This treasure, this mask, was never worth the cost, and now it was too late to change her fate. As the Baobab's curse claimed its toll, Amina made her choice. She would face the wrath of the earth or perish with the consequences of her greed. But as the spirits closed in around her, she realized there was no escape now. No one who had disturbed the Baobab would leave unscathed, and no one, not even Amina, could outrun the curse. The land shook with fury as the spirits of the dead rampaged through the village. Houses crumbled, crops withered, and the once thriving community descended into chaos. The air grew thick with the cries of the villagers, their wails drowned by the earth's rumbling anger. Some fled into the forest, others took shelter in caves, but many were swept away by the wrath that had been unleashed. The Baobab, the sacred tree that had stood for centuries, now cast a shadow over the broken village. Amina, her hands trembling, stood in the center of the ruin. The mask she had coveted for so long was lost, taken by the earth as the spirits pulled it into the depths. The treasure that had driven her to betray her own people was now beyond her reach. The power she had dreamed of now felt like a curse. Ekon, his face pale with defeat, met her gaze. His bloodline's quest for power had failed, and his destiny now seemed hollow in the face of the destruction he had caused. He spoke, his voice weak, his words carrying the weight of realization. "It was never meant to be," he whispered. "We have lost everything." Amina's heart, once filled with ambition, now felt cold with regret. She had lost the treasure. She had lost herself. And the village, once alive with the hopes of its people, lay in ruins. As the spirits continued to rage, a new presence emerged from the shadows. Bashir, once a quiet, hesitant man, now stood firm. His eyes, once filled with fear, now burned with the strength of the land itself. The villagers had watched him with uncertainty, but now they saw a leader in him. His time had come. Bashir approached Amina, his voice steady, like the earth beneath them. "The spirits demand that we atone," he said. "We cannot undo what has been done, but we can begin the work of healing." With Bashir's guidance, the villagers gathered around the Baobab, the sacred tree that had watched over them for generations. Mama Kwame, the elder woman known for her deep knowledge of the spirits, joined him. Together they began the cleansing ritual, an ancient tradition that had been passed down through the elders. They sang songs of the ancestors, offering prayers of apology, of healing, and of rebirth. The earth trembled once more, but this time it was different. The spirits' fury slowly began to subside. The air, once thick with the weight of vengeance, lightened. The ground that had cracked and split began to close, as if the land itself was listening to their plea for forgiveness. Amina watched from a distance, her heart heavy. She had witnessed the destruction of her own making. Her ambition had been her undoing, and now she stood in the ruins, surrounded by the ghosts of the past. The village she had once dreamed of leaving behind, with its simple ways and humble people, now seemed like a distant memory. Bashir turned to her as the ritual continued, his voice calm yet filled with wisdom. "The land speaks in ways we do not always understand," he said. "It whispers lessons, and only those who listen can hear them." Amina listened to the wind, the murmurs of the spirits, and for the first time she understood. The treasure had never been for her. It had been for the land, for the people, for the balance that had been disturbed by her greed. The pursuit of power, of wealth, had led her astray. But Bashir's words, like seeds planted in her heart, gave her hope. "There is always a way to rebuild," he continued. "The past may haunt us, but it does not define us. We have the power to listen, to learn, and to change." The cleansing ritual took hold, and slowly the spirit's wrath began to fade. The villagers, cautiously at first, began to return, their faces weary but hopeful. The curse that had plagued them was lifting, and the village, though scarred, began to heal. Amina stood at the edge of the Baobab's shadow, her heart full of sorrow. She turned away from the land she had once sought to conquer and walked toward the edge of the village. The Baobab, with its ancient wisdom, watched silently. She paused, looking back one final time. The mask, the treasure she had sought, was gone, and in its place she had found only loss. Her journey had begun with a thirst for power, but it ended with a lesson learned too late. The villagers, under Bashir's leadership, began to rebuild. The earth, though scarred, started to breathe again. The trees grew taller, the rivers ran clearer, and the people began to gather once more, this time with a deeper understanding of what they had lost. Bashir and Mama Kwame worked side by side, guiding the community through the long process of recovery. The village, reborn from the ashes of its destruction, began to find its way again. With the spirits at peace, the curse lifted, and the lessons of the past lived on in the hearts of the people. Amina, though, did not stay to see it. Her time in the village was done. She walked quietly away, her journey ending as quietly as it had begun. The young woman who had dreamed of power now understood the true cost of ambition. The lessons she had learned, the price of her greed, would stay with her forever. And as Amina disappeared into the distance, The village, under the guidance of Bashir, began anew. The land, though scarred, was healing, and with each new dawn, the hope of a fresh beginning rose with the sun. The baobab stood tall, its roots deep in the earth, its leaves whispering secrets of the past, its presence a reminder of the land's wisdom, and the price of disrespecting it. The village, reborn, would rise again, and this time they would listen. Amina stood in the silence of the village, her mind heavy with the weight of her choices. The grand dream she once held, a dream of wealth, power, and change, had crumbled before her eyes. What had started as a thirst for something greater, something beyond the village's borders, had become a nightmare. The treasure, the relic she thought would be her salvation, was now lost forever. The earth had swallowed it whole, as though it had never been hers to claim. The wind whispered through the broken trees, and Amina felt the land mourn with her. The faces of those who had trusted her, her people, now stood far from her reach. They had seen her rise in ambition, only to watch her fall in ruin. She thought of the mask, the symbol of power she had coveted. But now it meant nothing. The land had spoken, and it had taken back what she had tried to control. The village, once thriving, was scarred by the destruction she had caused. Yet, amidst the wreckage, something remained unbroken. The village had lost its material wealth, but the wisdom of its ancestors endured. The elders, those who had seen generations come and go, spoke of the spirits and the land's resilience. They spoke not of riches or power, but of balance, of respect for what was given and what was earned. Amina, for the first time, understood the truth in their words. She had sought change, but in the pursuit of her dreams, she had ignored the lessons of those who had walked before her. Her thoughts turned to the past, to the traditions she had dismissed. The elders had warned her, spoken of the curse that would come if one sought to change the natural order. But she had not listened. The hunger for power had drowned out their voices. Now, in the aftermath of her ambition, she saw clearly that the land, the spirits, and the ancestors had not been wrong. They had only been patient, waiting for the inevitable consequence of her disregard. Her fingers brushed against the scarred earth beneath her feet. It was as if the land itself was speaking to her, telling her that she had sealed her own fate with her desperation. The curse, she now realized, was not merely a force of the spirits. It was born from her own choices. Desperation had led her to take what did not belong to her. She had sought to control that which should have been left untouched. Bashir stood before her, the quiet strength of the ancestors now coursing through him. He had risen from fear to lead, and now, as the spiritual guide of the village, he spoke the truth she could no longer deny. "The true power," he said, his voice calm but unwavering, "is not in seeking to control the forces of nature, but in understanding them. The land speaks to us, but only if we listen." Amina bowed her head, the weight of his words sinking deep into her heart. She had been blinded by ambition, and in doing so, she had lost sight of the values that had once guided her people. The real treasure was never the mask, never the power to command. It was the understanding of the land, of the ancestors, and of the deep wisdom passed down through generations. The land had begun to heal, slowly but surely. The villagers, once scattered in fear, were now returning. With Bashir's leadership, they were reconnecting with the roots that had sustained them for so long. The healing was not just of the earth, but of the spirit. The curse that had haunted the village was lifting, not because of some mystical force, but because the people had finally humbled themselves before what was greater than them. Amina watched as the villagers gathered around the Baobab, the sacred tree. It stood tall, its roots deep in the earth, its leaves whispering the secrets of time. The Baobab, like the village, had endured much, but it had never lost its strength. The wisdom of the ancestors lived in its branches, and the villagers now understood that they must respect the tree, the land, and the traditions that had held them together. Amina's heart was heavy as she turned away. The power she had sought had been a mirage, a fleeting illusion. What she had gained was not wealth, but wisdom. She had learned too late that the pursuit of power without humility led only to ruin. The treasure had never been hers to claim. It had always belonged to the earth, to the people, to the spirits. As she walked away, the village behind her began to rise from the ashes. The people, guided by the wisdom of the ancestors and Bashir's leadership, were rebuilding. The air was thick with the smell of new life, of hope. The cycle of life had not ended. It had simply begun again. In the distance, the baobab's branches swayed in the breeze, and Amina, though far from it now, felt the lessons of the tree seep into her soul. Life, like the land, would always find a way to heal, and in the end it was the respect for tradition, for the land, for the ancestors, that would guide them all forward. Amina's journey had come to an end, but for the village the journey was only just beginning. Through the wisdom of the past they would rise, stronger and more united than ever before, and with each step forward, the lessons of humility, respect, and reverence would guide them. The cycle of life would continue, as it always had, and this time, the village would listen.